Real estate is about freedom, choice freedom, time freedom, and money freedom, and the impact you can make with that freedom. But it doesn't come without cost. Your freedom takes work. That's why Neil Timmons brings together the tools you need to build your real estate legacy, from tips and tricks to interviews with industry titans. It's all here in one place. Real Grit. Let's get to it.
Everybody, welcome to Real Grit. I'm here with Nick Legamaro. Nick is known as Nick the Note Guy. He's been involved in real estate since 2001, has personally been involved in over 1,000 properties, bought, fixed, flipped, sold, and been the lender on over 1,000. And he's analyzed, he's underwritten over 10,000 deals. So I'm excited to have him here because he's got a whole breadth of experience. Nick, how you doing, man?
And good to see you again, Neil. How you been?
I'm great. It's good to see you. I appreciate you taking the time here.
I'm excited to dive down and hopefully share some good nuggets for the listeners or viewers, depending on how they're digesting this podcast. And yeah, man, I'm excited. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. Well, listen, life's a journey. Let's just start here. How did you even get into this industry?
That is a great question. So I've been around for, like you said, since early 2000. Yeah. So not only was I around in 2000, but I was around pre-2008 crash.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. I was just in Phoenix speaking at another event. Yeah. And I don't know, there's maybe 250 people in the audience. It was a pretty good turnout. And I asked a question. I go, hey, how many people were doing real estate before 2008? Right. Yeah. And out of 250, I could count on two hands how many people actually raised their hand. Yeah. Yep. I go, yeah, you guys really need to listen, because everything is great right now. Everything's been great for the last 5 years. What's going to happen when the pendulum shifts to the other way, right?
Correct. Yep.
And you have to be prepared. I think we are much more educated now. We have a lot more access to data and information than we ever did, because back in the early 2000s, there was none of this. There were no podcasts, for example.
Correct.
There were no REI groups, and there were no meetups. There was no
Zillow wasn't around. The data would look very different. Right.
You had to get when you got foreclosure information, it was on a you downloaded a spreadsheet and printed it out.
Right.
All the data and all the information that's so readily available that allows us to be efficient and be productive in what we try to do.
Right.
Never existed. And so I learned from at the School of Hard Knocks, man. And that's why I'm so adamant about speaking, because if I can teach people how to accelerate that learning curve and process, because look, here's the thing. You don't need to spend a lot of money on education today.
Right.
You can get a lot of education for basically free.
Right.
I mean, podcasts, we're not charging for this information.
Correct.
Now, I always say you get what you pay for. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but at least it gives you something to think about. It gives you food for thought, right? It allows you to go, I never thought of that. That is a good idea. Or makes you think maybe what you're doing can be done more efficiently, can be done a different way. I've always said there's more than one way to get to Chicago, right?
That's right.
You can take a bus, you can ride a bike, you can walk, you can jump on a plane, take a train. It all depends. And what it all depends on is why you need to get to Chicago, how fast you need to get there, how much money do you have to invest in getting to Chicago. Well, real estate's no different. So
no different.
Everybody's got a different path they choose to take. And the path that we're going to talk about that I chose is a path that not many people have taken, but it may be a path that people should consider taking.
You're exactly right, because the traditional real estate, if you will, is really has been buy and hold. If you look at historically true, how do you invest in real estate? You buy and hold. And then, through a whole bunch of things, people obviously got into fix and flip, taking advantage of changes. They don't want to be in that business. And then wholesaling, in 2010 during the crash, nobody knew what a wholesaler was. Just like pre-crash, nobody knew what a short sale was.
Yeah.
Nobody, right?
No one knows what a short sale is now, right?
No, you're exactly right.
We're going to have a short sale ever again.
It's not mainstream. I gotta, you're exactly right. It may be years to come before that ever.
Yeah, there's too much equity in these properties. Short sales are, there's just no need for them, to be quite honest with you. Not with the level of sophistication.
I read a piece the other day that indicated that of all the foreclosures, all the people being foreclosed upon, something like 80+%, 83% of those being foreclosed upon have equity. Well, I mean,
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Banks are smarter now, right?
Correct.
Banks aren't going to get stuck like they did in there. And what they'll do is they'll just sell that paper. They'll
Correct.
sell that. When I say paper, I'm talking about the note, the
note.
mortgage note,
Yeah.
the promissory note. They'll just sell that as a non-performing note on the open market and get, a portion of their money back and
That's right.
clear that bad debt off their books and move on.
Right.
And it's what's going to really suck for a lot of the people that are in, they think banks are bad or mean or obnoxious. And I'm not going to say that I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But when you get an individual or a small portfolio buyer, and in a whole different ball game, you're not going to get the kindness and banks notoriously don't care as much when they get paid. Okay.
Yep.
So, and let's talk about that for a second. So we coming out of COVID. Well, who knows when we're going to come out of COVID? We're still in it, right?
Right.
But you go back to when this all began in March of 2020, right? For a good portion of 2020, and not everybody, but there was a moratorium on evictions.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Landlords had a difficult time collecting in a lot of places the rent payments that were due to them. The government said, "Hey,
Good. Don't
tenant,
have
you
to
don't need to
pay,
pay.
and
Don't need to
don't have to pay.
pay."
And the same thing, the landlord can't kick them out.
Yeah, you can't do anything. So it's fair to say landlords did not always get paid.
That's correct.
And some don't get paid. Well, it's different when you're the bank. And what I'm going to talk about today is I like to be a lien lord, not a landlord. Okay.
Yeah.
I like to think, act, and be a bank, not a landlord. And we'll get into that here in a second.
Yeah.
But banks always get paid, Neil. They always get paid. I'm going to say it again. Banks always get paid. And here's why they always get paid. They might not get paid today. They might not get paid tomorrow or 6 months from now, but they will get paid because they control the asset. They don't own the asset. They control that property that you borrowed against and said, I promise to pay. That's what a note is. A promissory note is a promise to pay.
Right.
Well, guess what? If you promise to pay and you don't pay because of the way that it's written, the house that you own is collateralized by the debt is collateralized by that property.
By the asset. Yep.
The bank, well, they might make a forbearance or they might do a loan modification or give you a deed in lieu or cash for keys. Maybe not the bank, but somebody may. And the last and final straw of the whole thing is foreclosure, right?
Correct.
So guess what? If I'm a lender, and this is why I love being the bank, is because as a lender, I have my investment is protected because I have that asset, that house that's been on that street for 30 years, however long it's been there. It ain't getting up and driving down the road like a car, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be there. So I have that extra layer of security and protection to protect my investment, assuming I underwrote the borrower correctly and I did what I needed to do to make sure my investment is protected. And banks, if they've learned anything since 2008, they learn how to underwrite borrowers better today than they did 10 or 15 years ago. And that's why there's not going to, this pandemic's changed that a little bit, but not as many short sales going up to that point. And like we talked about, there really is a need because there's so much equity. But anyway,
yeah, you're right. Their underwriting has looked, it looks today very different than what it did,
Well, and that's why let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
In right now, and this is what people have a hard time comprehending this, but it's true. And I'm not going to, there's plenty of sources where you can get data from, and every source may be a little bit different. So I'm not even going to cite the source. You can go look this up.
Yeah.
Right now, the number of people that cannot qualify for a traditional mortgage in the United States today is somewhere between 60 and 70%. So that means out of 100 people that want to go buy a home and get bank financing from traditional lenders like Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, are going to get their application declined. Okay. For one reason or another. Okay. Could because they don't have a W-2 job. Their credit score doesn't meet the minimum requirements, their DTI, that the income ratio is not right. It doesn't matter. Almost 70%. Okay. That's a pretty high number because interest rates are historically low right now.
It's a staggering high number. Yes, it is.
Staggering number.
Yep.
So those people that desperately want to have home ownership don't have the opportunity to so because the bank tells them no. So let's talk about another statistic here, and then I'll get into sort of why we like to be in the bank. 80% of people that rent because they have to,
That's right.
not because they want to.
Right.
Okay. So that's great if you're a landlord. And I'm not saying I'm not knocking landlords. It's a great model. If I was 20 years old, younger, I would probably consider having a rental portfolio,
Yeah.
but I'm not. So I choose not to, because I learned a long time ago that if it's good enough for the bank, it's probably good enough for most. Okay. And
Yep.
banks don't have rental portfolios.
Nope.
Banks control property. They don't own anything. They don't own it. They don't want to own.
They don't want to own it.
And they probably can't even legally own it anyway. And if they take it back, they got to make some REO and they get rid of it.
Yep.
But so I learned a long time ago that how do I want to, not only do I want to think like a bank, I want to act like a bank. I want to be the bank. I really
Yeah.
want to be the bank. And a lot of people don't know that they can actually be the bank. They can buy mortgage notes. They can create
Yeah.
their own mortgage notes. And we work with a lot of wholesalers, landlords,
Yeah.
and fix and flippers, and teach them exactly how to take a lead or a property that they may consider doing one exit with,
Yes.
and consider doing a strategy that allows them to be the bank and stay in the deal from a cash flow position for a long, long period of time. So,
Well, you really struck a chord with me when you say be a bank, be the bank, because, I hail from Des Moines, Iowa. Wells Fargo's
Yep.
home mortgage business is right here in my backyard. The largest mortgage company, largest mortgage holder on the face of the planet. But it wouldn't be every other person, but it sure feels like every other person works for Wells Fargo here,
Yep.
the largest employer in the state. It's tremendous what they have built. So I just think about not just my city, but almost any city you go to. It seems like every big building or every other big building has got a bank's name on
well,
it.
I'm glad you said it. And I usually
Yeah.
bring this up. You can go to any city in the entire country. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's a primary, secondary, or tertiary city market. And you go downtown, and on one of those corners, if not all of the corners, it's a bank.
Yes.
You go into the major cities and you look straight up from downtown Dallas, Phoenix, St. Louis, Chicago, and you look up, you're going to see the name of a bank on the top of the
That's
building.
right.
And doesn't say the name of the hedge fund, doesn't say the name of some fix and flip company,
Right.
or even a real estate company for that matter, right?
Nope. Right.
It has the name of the bank. And like I said, if it's good enough for banks, it's probably good enough for most. But the question is, how do you become a bank? Because no one's going to be.
That's my next
bank
question.
building.
That's
Yes.
that's the next question. It was
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's-
So let's get into it. How does one become the bank?
Well, there's a couple different ways. The simplest way is to go out, just like you go buy a property
Yeah.
for sale, and you do whatever you're going to do with it. You can buy a mortgage. You can buy a mortgage note or a promissory note that's already been created, right? That's the easy way. But obviously, there's risk with that because you didn't underwrite the borrower. It could have been underwritten 5 years ago. You don't know all the dynamics of it, but there's a market for that right now. Just like there's a market to buy and sell real estate.
Yep.
There's a market to buy and sell mortgage notes. And in fact, I have a company that does just that. We buy and sell and create mortgage notes on our USA Note Pro. And if anybody and we'll put in the show notes, goes to usanotepro.com, they can learn about mortgage notes, and they can learn about, what they look for if they want to buy, if they want to sell, if they want to create. There's some ebooks and some other stuff on there. They have a mortgage note they want to sell, they can do it there. So that's number one. My preferred method is to create them. So how do I create them?
Right.
Well, obviously you have to have a property to lend on. But what I don't do is I don't lend to a buyer where the property is not mine. Okay. So I have to own the property.
You've got to own the property. Yeah.
I don't have to own it for a long period of time. I just have to own it long enough to find the buyer. So let's talk about a wholesaler or a wholesaler. So a wholesaler is a great example of where this works. And I buy of all the hundreds and hundreds of transactions that I've done, majority of my deals came from wholesalers because they weren't able to figure out how to monetize a lead that didn't fit the traditional wholesaling model, right?
Yep.
So traditional wholesaling model, whatever it is, it's maximal allowable offer, right?
Correct.
That's what we all are taught and learn
MAO.
what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Well, let's just say it's a $100,000 property, for example, and it's there, and maybe it's an aggressive market. It's 80% less repairs. Repairs are 20. that means their maximum allowable offer is roughly $60,000.
Right.
Well, my maximum allowable offer is much greater than that because I'm going to buy that property and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to create financing on it. So when you're a fix and flipper, you're doing it to basically create a transactional model that allows you to cash out in the form of selling that property to a retail buyer. But let's talk about this for a second. A retail buyer has to do what? Retail buyer has to qualify.
They got to qualify for financing.
That's number one. And we just talked about 70% can't qualify.
Right.
So now you're dealing with 30. But what other parties are involved in a retail transaction? Well, the bank is, right?
The bank is, for sure.
And we already know what their requirements are. You're also dealing with an inspection.
Yep.
You're also dealing with an appraisal.
Yes.
Right. You're dealing with realtors and you're dealing with a bunch of other things. And all of those things add time to the ability to sell that property, cash out, and repeat and rent and do it again. Right.
Correct. Yep.
It really puts a strangle on the velocity of doing deals. Okay.
Yep. Right.
Now, can you make money doing it? Absolutely. That's what people do anyway. That's what you see on all the television shows. It's fix and flop and fix and this and do all this other stuff. That's great. So what we do is that we'll buy that property and we will do the same thing. Sometimes we'll fix them. Sometimes we will not, because grandma's house that we just bought is perfectly fine to live in. Hell, she was just living in it, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's
but
right.
for a traditional retail buyer, they want everything.
They want everything new. Yep.
Want everything new. They want it to be perfect. They don't want anything other than that. And they
want the stainless and the granite. Right.
And they control the hammer is what I say, because they are a qualified retail buyer.
Correct.
They only represent 30%, right? So if they're in there and you're looking at who usually controls, well, that's really sort of a bad question, because in the last year or so, the seller really has controlled the deal, not the buyer, right?
Correct.
But
yes, the way the pricing
typically
is.
speaking,
Yep.
that's not normally the case.
That's correct.
The demand. So let's go back to the numbers, and I want to get back to where I'm going with the retail versus owner finance buyer. A retail buyer, for every 100 houses that are for sale, and you have 100 buyers, let's use 100 and 100. We know only 30% of the people can qualify under the conditions the bank have for those 100 houses. Okay. But there's always more coming in. So it's a moving
target.
So it never stops, right? It's like, it's like a game of musical chairs where the music never stops.
Correct.
Right. So you don't ever have a chance to sit down. Whereas when you look at the stuff that's available for sale with seller financing or owner financing, only about 5% of those people are selling those properties on terms or seller financing, right? So if there's 100 houses for sale in the market, and only 5% of those, and it's actually less in some markets, can actually
it's well less in my market. Yes.
Go do a search on Zillow. I call it my Zillow test.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. Go into Zillow, go look at all the properties that are available for sale. Okay. Then go into the search filter and put in part of the filter seller financing. Okay. And watch how many come up that are for sale that have seller financing available.
Yep.
It's not very many.
No.
Then what you have to do is you got to also go look at what happens is you can't even take that number, because a lot of times it says seller financing not available. So you'll find it in the search, but it's really not even available. And it's just telling you that it's not available.
Right.
So it's an unfair fight to our advantage when we sell on terms or seller financing.
Yep.
Because the demand, we already know 70% of the population needs it because they can't go get a traditional bank loan.
Yep.
That's it. And it's economics 101, it's supply and demand. So how do we create this opportunity to capitalize on a needed market, a service in a market that's extremely needed, and sold it to a 100-year-old federally chartered bank? So going back to how do we actually do this? So we just basically, instead of exiting on a retail, we just look for a seller finance buyer, and then we underwrite them. And now that's a long, that's probably not another call, but you need to make sure you underwrite the borrower correctly. And what that means is following Dodd-Frank and SAFE Act and, the servicing of the note. But let me say this, anybody that's on this, you don't need to know how to do any of that. You just need to know that it has to be done. Just like when you go close a property at a title company,
Right.
you don't necessarily need to know all the
All,
inner workings
all,
of what a
all,
title
you don't
company
need to
is.
know what every stack of that paperwork
No,
means. You
you
just
just
need
need
to
to
know
know that,
you need to know who to
yes,
go to create that stack.
yes. And you
Right.
just need to know who the parties are involved to do it. That's the first and foremost. Because let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
We're talking about seller financing,
Yeah.
and we talk about how, just take a guess on how much non-traditional notes are created each year in the United States that don't have the name of a traditional lender like Wells Fargo, Chase, or Bank of America. Like people that are either small cap lenders or mom and pop lenders that actually go create their own mortgage notes on properties. Take a guess on what you think that might be.
Well, I'm trying to think how many homes sell a year, maybe total 4 million, somewhere in that range, maybe 5 million. So
Right.
I'm going to say that it's, let's say it's,
So do it
you
in
know,
a dollar value because every dollar value is a little different.
yeah. I'm going to, this is going to be fun. I'm getting my calculator here because it's going to be fun to know exactly just how far off.
Yeah, take a
guess is
swag
there.
because look,
I'm gonna-
you're fair. I would say you're fairly knowledgeable in the real estate space and whatnot. And it's no one really thinks about this, and that's why I want to bring this up and I want to explain.
No, I'm going to guess 50,000 transactions at, say $100,000 a piece. Put this at, what is that number? 5 billion.
That would be an incorrect answer, Neil. It's about $25 billion a year.
5 times my guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's billion, not millions. Okay. I don't even know
No.
how many zeros are in a billion because I don't have billions. My calculator doesn't go up that that high.
Yeah.
But $25 billion, the paper that's created, just like the stuff that I'm talking about, you can do it. So you're an established, real estate investor. The people that are listening, these probably have done numerous deals, money
Right.
deals over time.
Right.
And they probably don't know that the seller finance or seller carry business is $25 billion a year.
Hundreds of
And
thousands
they
of
don't even know how to
transactions a
be
year.
the bank.
Right.
Okay. So here's the thing on the $25 billion of all that paper that written, I would say, because I've written more than my share of notes. I mean, I've
Sure.
physically and personally written 1,000 notes. Okay.
Yep.
What I see most of the time, because we buy notes and I look at all these notes that are created, I would say well over 90% of that $25 billion that's created is written incorrectly. Okay. Now, I don't mean incorrectly from the standpoint that it's not legal. What I'm saying is that they didn't do things best business practices to
Not
give
going
it
to follow best practices. Yep.
yeah, where you don't get the most value in the note. Because if I write 100,000, I call it, I'm in Texas, I call it my Ford F-150 example. If I could have two identical 2015 Ford F-150 pickup
Right.
trucks,
Yep.
right? They both got 50,000 miles on them. They're both white, and they both have tan leather interior.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the surface, they appear to be the same, but
Right.
after you look a little closer, you find out one of them has been maintained, the other is not.
Yep.
The other one has never. It's got holes in the seats and Chick-fil-A wrappers in the back seat from the kids.
Yep.
And one has beat the crap and door dings and paint scratches and hail damage, and the other one's in pristine condition.
Not worth the same.
Not anywhere nearly worth the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, notes are no different than that. And when you don't do the things that are needed to make it worth as much as it is, doubt and risk becomes a factor in the note of the note buyer, because you tell me, you mean you didn't take a 1003 application on the buyer, like a regular mortgage loan application?
Yep.
You didn't pull credit on the buyer. You only got $500 down payment instead of 10% down, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You're not collecting taxes and insurance. You're not using a third-party servicer.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, check. That's another 2% discount on the note. Check. That's 3% discount. And before you know it, that note that has $100,000 value,
Yep,
on paper is only worth 75% on the dollar, right?
Yeah.
That's where they get into trouble. The other biggest problem that I see that they do when they write notes is they write them, and this is probably the biggest mistake. If anybody who creates notes or writes notes, they write them at too low of an interest rate.
too low of an interest rate.
Too low of an interest rate, because most investors that buy notes are looking for yield, right?
Yes,
So
correct.
if you write it, banks do not care about that because they're arbitraging the difference, right? They're getting a small percentage on the spread overall, millions and
Huge.
billions of dollars of
Correct.
stuff. So they're getting it from the feds at, 2%, and they're
Right.
selling to you, writing it to you at 3. They're making a point, but they're making it on volume.
Correct.
But what happens is that people think and go, well, the bank rate's 2.5%, 3%.
Right.
I don't know. How about 4%? Does that sound like a good deal? Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a great deal for
It's
the
a great
borrower,
deal. Right.
but it's a horrible deal if you ever want to exit out of the note. And here's the reason why. People have life events. Institutions do not. Okay.
Yep.
So if I'm an individual and I write you a mortgage and you pay on it for 5 years, okay, that's great. But let's say in 5 years, I get sick. There's a wedding. Somebody needs to go to college, needs a new car, lose my job. I may need to sell that note
Right.
to cash out of it so I can go do something else that's more important than the cash flow. Where a bank doesn't care about that because the bank lives forever. They're not going anywhere, right? They
That's
just
right.
want the cash flow, and that's how they build it. So those are really the bottom line. So let's just talk about how we do this. And there's services that can help for all this stuff. We would use something that we can also help with. But the model that I like, the personal model that I
Yeah.
use, and this is what we talk about, is that ideally what I'm trying to accomplish is very simple. I'm looking to generate cash now, cash flow, cash later, with little to no risk and an infinite ROI.
Sounds pretty attractive.
Say that one more time.
I said that sounds pretty attractive. Yes.
Well, I think it is, and if people go, no, that's not possible. Well, it is absolutely possible, and not only is it possible, I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. And here's how it works: is that what I do is let's use a $200,000 sale price. It's just easier math for me in my head.
Perfect.
If I sell a property for $200,000, okay, and I get 10% down, I'm getting $20,000 down payment.
Right now.
That leaves me a balance of $180,000.
That's right.
What I then do with that $180,000 when I sell or finance it, I write a first lien for $150,000. I write a second lien for $30,000. So 150 plus 30
Yep.
plus 20 down, $200,000.
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
So what I do is then I take that first lien and I sell that first lien because I underwrote it correctly. I did all the papering correctly. I made it the most valuable that it could ever be because I followed the things that we
Proper procedures. What's required. Yep.
Yeah. So let's just say, for argument's sake, I sell that for $145,000. Okay. Because you got to pay a little discount, time value money, all that other stuff.
Sure.
So now, and it depends on the location. And if it's in Chicago, Illinois, you might only get 135 for it.
Right.
If it's in Dallas, Texas, I might get 148. It just all depends.
Yep.
Also depends on the borrower file, et cetera. But let's just go through the example here. So I have that 145. Let's just say, for argument's sake, my cost basis is 150. Okay.
Yep.
So because I had to buy it, and I had to fix it, I had carrying costs and all that stuff,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Well, I sold my first lien for 145. My cost basis is 150, so I'm -5 in that example. But I collected $20,000
On the down. Correct.
right? So after marketing fees and stuff, maybe my net cash on this transaction ends up being, I don't know, $5, $6, $10,000, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But I also have a free and clear second note,
$30,000.
$30,000,
Yeah.
10% interest, amortized over 30 years, cash flowing $260, $70 a month, whatever the calculation is. Okay.
Yep.
That's the profit on the deal. So cash now is that $5,000 to $10,000.
Yep.
Cash flow is 10.5% on $30,000 for, in perpetuity for up to 30 years.
Right.
Okay. Another $270,000. I don't have my calculator here.
Yep.
It's in that ballpark, depending on what your interest rate is.
Yeah.
And then the cash later, here's the best part of it. The cash later is what? Well, the cash later is, let's just say that borrower sells that house in 10 years,
Right.
refinances it, whatever the case may be. Guess what's going to happen?
You get
They're
paid
going to
off.
call,
Right.
You're going to call the bank. Well, who's the bank? I'm the bank. You're the bank, right?
Yeah.
In the second lien position, they're going to go, Mr. Nick, we need a payoff on 123 Main Street on the second lien that you're holding that was written for $30,000 10 years ago. Now we're 10 years in advance. run an amortization schedule at 10% interest and tell me what that payoff's going to be. And I was going to tell you it's going to be about $25,000 or $26,000.
Correct.
So guess what I get then? I get another check for $25,000 or $26,000.
Right.
So, people will argue, well, you can make more money by doing a buy and hold. Well, yeah, but you have a lot more risk, because what's my risk on this deal? My risk is I don't get paid on something I owe nothing on.
Right.
Okay. I like that model.
It's not
Especially
just,
now.
it's not just risk. It's, let's go. What's the proper word? It's brain damage for what's required to maintain and manage a group, a portfolio of properties.
Yeah. I think we're buy and hold investors, and there's nothing wrong with buy and hold investing. I mean, there's a lot of money to make a lot of people make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And people will argue, well, you don't get depreciation. I hear this all the time. I go,
Mhm.
well, banks don't get depreciation. They don't seem to have a problem with it. Depreciation is great if you have something to get the offset the depreciation with.
Correct.
You got to make a crap ton of money. Well, a lot of
Correct.
people in this space, 99% of the people aren't doing the volume that warrants having hundreds of thousand dollars in depreciation. That's number
Right.
one. Number two is that depreciation doesn't last forever.
Right.
You got to figure out how you're going to get back out of it at some point in time. It's like a shark, right? You got to keep rolling it over and keep moving forward.
Well,
If
the
you ever
only
stop, you're done.
the only way you avoid catching up in depreciation is dying.
Yeah. Well, and that could be somebody's model as well.
And
So
that's, yeah, right. But that's you're right. Is someday you got to pay that piper on the depreciation.
yeah. So for me, it's like, I don't like the brain damage, and
Right.
I don't like a lot of people there's something called hypothecation, for example, where you take that known pledges as collateral and you borrow against it,
Borrow
sort of
against
like
it.
just sort of like a buy and hold investment.
A buy and hold.
Same difference, except that you don't have the property as collateral like you do on a buy and hold investment, because you already deeded it to somebody else.
Correct. You'd
You
have the
have
note.
though.
Right.
Yeah. So it's pretty much the same. I don't personally like that model because I have financial responsibility, personal guarantees, and a lot of other things.
Correct.
Very similar to a buy and hold model. Look, let's think about it. For example, you have a rental portfolio of 100 properties. 10, let's make it simple. 5 properties.
Yeah.
Three of your borrowers stop paying rent. Maybe your houses are vacant. Doesn't make a difference. You still have underlying debt and responsibility to
Correct.
whoever you borrowed it from. So unless you're sitting on a big stack of cash and you have reserves, which, let's be honest, most people don't. They don't look at it from that perspective. They just look at how much they're going to get on a monthly cash flow.
Right.
And that's what gets them in the problem. I had friends that had 25, 30, 50 rental properties in their portfolio and physically lost money year after year because they didn't take into consideration the deferred maintenance or the vacancy rates or, the getting paid and stuff like that. So I like dealing in known quantities. Personally, Neil, I would rather know that I'm going to get a 10% return because I can scale that and model that out than playing the high risk, the higher risk game that it doesn't allow me to really do it. I'm not young anymore, man. I mean, I'm not old, but I'm not 25 where if this fails, I don't want to have to go back and rebuild it again. Right.
Correct.
That's sort of part of the thing. That was fun back then. Not so much fun now, man. I want to hang up this call and go do something fun, go play golf or something besides talk to you. No offense.
What I think is interesting and about your model and the fact that you're not getting 10%. In fact, the rate of return is infinite because you have exited the property. You have no dollars left invested in this thing. You got paid on the way out and you get paid continuing on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm getting a little bit of cash now.
Right.
I'm getting a little bit of cash flow and I'm getting cash later, and I'm okay with that model. I guess that's the can other people do better? But when I take in the risk aspect of it, I don't even know how you can compare the two.
No, I don't think you can. I agree. You have applied a significant risk reduction strategy in this.
Yeah, and you can't get that by buying Tesla or Amazon stock. I can tell you that. You can't get that by being doing the Burr strategy or being a buy and hold investor, or even a fix and flipper for that matter. I mean, the only way you can probably have almost little to no risk is if you're a wholesaler. But then that's a transactional model, right?
It's your income. You're not building wealth, and
that's a job,
and you never get off of it. It's a job. There's no, You only in the three pillars you just said, get paid now, get paid ongoing, get paid later. They only operate on one in a wholesaler model. You only get paid now. That's it.
Yeah. So we're taking a little bit of cash now. We're getting a little bit of everything.
Right.
We're getting, future payout. And, for me, I'm cool with it. And most people that when they see it and they get into it, because we have like a private Facebook group that's all about creative deal structuring, and anybody that's interested in it, we can put that in the show notes. It's just facebook.com/groups/creative deal maker right here on the sign, or go to Creative Deal Maker and there's some video series and stuff. And that's not what this is about. What we do is about what we talk about, and what I do is exactly what I do every single day from a personal side of it. And I just love the model so much. I love sharing it with people because it just makes, because there's no shows about this, man. There's no shows on A&E or HGTV, and there's not even a lot of people that are talking about it or educating on it, because
that's right.
It's not that it's difficult, it's just complex, Neil. And whereas a wholesale model might only have 10 steps from getting it under contract to getting paid, this might have 75 steps. And how do you manage all those steps? Well, that's the cool thing about it, is that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, building a system and a process around all this that allows people to take advantage of the system and process and replicate it and duplicate it. Because at the end of the day, it's a big blue ocean out there. And I can never, ever even come close to doing all these deals myself. It's just such an unfair fight in our advantage that allows us to provide goodwill for people that are hardworking at one home ownership and make a profit and play in a space that not many people participate in. Because look, the wholesale models, man, that's a tough model, man.
It's a tough go. Correct.
Tough model.
Yeah.
But and I just did a deal. This is a funny story. I just did a deal that I bought from a wholesaler, and I saw it was an assignment. So I saw the assignment fee on it.
Sure.
He made like $6,000, $6,200.
Okay.
And in a competitive market like Dallas, where this deal was located, that's not horrible, because there's hundreds of wholesalers.
Correct.
I took that same property. Not only did I take that property, I bought it from him. I bought it using hard money, which is expensive capital.
Yep.
I turned around and I sold it. I didn't put a nickel's worth of work in it. I sold it on with seller financing at a fair price relative to retail value.
Yep.
I created my own note on it. I sold the first, kept the second. I made $7,500 on the transactional side of it, the net cash side of it.
On the cash now
and
side.
I got to keep a $25,000 second lien. So I didn't do anything more than the wholesaler did, except do it a little bit better.
Right.
And I made $1,500 more or $1,300 more than him on the cash. Plus I get the benefit of a $25,000 note amortized over 10.5% over 30 years.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so, I could have actually bought that house for more, because think about it.
Correct.
I could have taken him out of that deal completely and bought it for more than he had put it under contract for.
That's right.
So here's the question. If I told you if I told you that you can make $300 a month cash flow, and this is not even really a fair analogy, because we're talking amortized loans versus, traditional interest. But if I told you you could make $300 a month cash flow and it cost you $5,000 for that, would that be a good return on your money?
How many can I get?
Exactly.
Right.
So when I talk about cash now, cash flow, cash later,
yes,
I show the example. I made $7,500.
Yeah.
And I still got the free and clear note.
Yes.
What if it cost me $10,000?
What if you went the other way to create that?
What if I wrote a check and I said, I'm going to make $300 a month, but I'm going to take $3,000. It's going to cost me $10,000 to do it. Let's just do it. 300 times 12, 3,600, divide that by 10,000. That's 36%.
Where are you going to get that? Where are you going to get that with the lack of risk, right? With the risk reduction strategy that you've employed? The answer.
Yeah. Now it is in the second.
Right.
Now our people will go, well, it's in the second lien position. Well, okay. So what? If the property is truly worth what it is, I really don't care. Property is probably going to go up in value, but more important, I still have that asset as collateral, right?
Correct.
So my point is that if I am going to invest 36, using this example, $300 a month cash flow, $10,000 to get to that. Remember, that's a 30-year term in perpetuity at $300 a month. But let's just say I invest $10,000 to get that 36% return, and I divide that by 300 a month. I'm getting all my capital back in 33 months.
Correct.
Doing almost 3 years. So what that says, in 33 months, I get all my money back. And in the last 227 payments, it's all free and clear.
Right.
Because my debt, I'm already, and every month that goes by, I'm reducing my cost basis anyway, which is different than other strategies where you're not reducing it because you still have that debt in place, right?
Correct. Yep.
Now, not to say that you don't have the money, but let's be honest, Neil.
It's getting
I'm
spent.
I'm not very good at managing money sometimes. And I know I'm going to get paid tomorrow. So I'll go out and spend it today. It happens every day, right?
Yep. Right.
And sometimes you get caught, being a little bit, I don't want to say greedy, but just being a little bit careless, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think this is I don't think this is the time and place in the community, in the marketplace to really be going in guns a-blazing. I mean, the government could turn around and shut us down tomorrow.
You saw what they did during the pandemic, and you're right. Having a risk reduction strategy and being mindful of the risk, not just the upside, but the risk you're taking in order to get that, I think is imperative, and what nobody paid attention to. And coming through that 2006, 7, 8 range, and a lot of folks paid for it. Right.
Exactly. I mean, that's pretty much in a nutshell. I mean, that's a lot, obviously, to absorb and digest in a short period of time. I mean, what other questions can I answer? Do you think?
Tell me, has there been any challenges along the way in terms of in finding this path?
Well, it's been
sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty.
Yeah, so it's been extremely difficult recently because everybody and their brother's in the real estate game, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So when this pendulum shifts the other direction, which it will, how far it goes the other direction, we don't know, but it will shift. We're already seeing it shifting now to a certain extent. Because here's the thing. People buy houses, and when they buy them, it's not like a car. They're not going to buy another one in 2 years, right?
Yep.
They're going to probably, and with the prices continue to go up and up and up, they're not going to be, they're locked in. Most of those people buy. So you have new buyers coming in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But so it's tough and it's going to be tricky. But I just saw, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine that does fix and flips.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was just saying that, like a year ago, his cost of acquisition was like 140 to 150. That same property, the same cost, or the total cost base is now 190. So it went up in cost, but the profitability didn't go up proportionally with that.
Correct.
If anything, it actually went
down.
Right. So when you think about velocity of capital, let's just say you have $1 million in your capital stack, and everything now costs you $200,000. You get to do 5.
Correct.
If you were doing them when they were 150,000, when you could do 7 or 8 or whatever the math is on it, right? And you do them and you can do more, and that's why you get bigger returns. That's no longer the case. And I think that's what people are not taking into consideration when they're considering a fix and flip model. Can you make money in it? Yeah, but I don't know that you're making the same amount. And everybody has a different perspective on what a good deal is, right?
Correct.
Some people don't have a problem doing the model to make $10,000 every 3 months on a deal. That's not my model. I can tell you that right now, but it doesn't mean it's not a good deal for them.
Right.
So,
well, you sure have an interesting business and interesting exit strategy. One to put an arrow in one's quiver, and then you really dial it in and specialized in it.
Yeah, I think so. And we take, but we didn't really talk about landlords. Let's talk about landlords for a second. Yeah. We briefly touched on them earlier.
Right.
Look, if you're a landlord out there and you're a tired landlord and you're tired of screwing around with people that don't pay and
tenants, toilets, and termites,
all that crap, take that asset and turn it into a seller finance property. Make sure you know how to do it and you follow the right protocol to make sure you do it correctly. But you could turn that property into a cash flowing bank note, just like the banks do, and not have to deal with any of that stuff and change the ownership. Because let me ask you a question, Neil. Have you ever had a bank mortgage ever?
Yep.
And I don't care who it was with or how long you had it. How many times did you ever call the bank?
How many times you ever called the bank?
How many every
Uh,
time you ever call the bank?
I think and I have lots of mortgages. We've got lots of properties. I honestly think I have called my mortgage company honestly one time in 17 years.
One time in 17 years, and you
Yeah.
have mortgages. Okay.
I got dozens and dozens and dozens of mortgages. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most people never call the bank. There's no reason to call the bank because you're not going to call the bank when your roof leaks or your
Correct.
HVAC system goes out
Correct.
or any of that stuff.
Right.
So that's it. So, but if you're a landlord, you might be getting a phone call right now as a landlord and you don't even know it because you're listening to this.
We got multiples of calls from that side of the business this
So
month. Correct. No, you're absolutely right. Right.
So it's just a choice, right? It's just a lifestyle choice on how you want to do it. I prefer to be the bank, be the landlord, not a landlord. And that's it, man. So
It goes, I think it goes past that. It goes past that because one's very traditional and one is let's say less traditional, but only because it's probably there's more steps to it. It's not as you can't put it on a television show in 22 minutes.
not very
And
sexy, Neil.
it's not very sexy. No. So for people, they want to follow you. They want to find out more. Where can they follow you? And we'll make sure we get the show links in here.
Yeah. So you can go to usanotepro.com, USANote pro.com. That's our forward site that talks really about all the notes, which is sort of like the end of the line relative to what we really talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
If they really want to learn more about the creative deal structuring, whether they're a wholesaler,
doing it themselves,
an investor, a buy and hold investor, you can go to, you can see it on my head there, creativedealmaker.com. There's some other stuff in there. Join the private Facebook group and just get on. We do weekly live calls, and we invite everybody in. We talk about deal structuring. My partner, Eric Sage, and myself will get on it. We actually got one coming up here in just a little bit, and we'll go in there and people bring us deals and we'll talk about structure, what we would do, why we would do it. And we don't give any like legal advice or financial advice or tax advice. Defer that to the experts there. Yep. But we just talk about, just have a conversation on like why we would do it and how we would do it. And most importantly, what I will say about this, and then we'll be done, is that I actually do this stuff. My partner, Eric, actually does these deals.
Yeah.
My name is physically shown up on 1,000+ closing statements. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what I do. All I'm doing is having a conversation now with people on how we do it and why we do it. And it's up to them to decide if it's a good thing for them to do. But I'm not somebody I'm not an educator. That's not what I really do. I mean, I do deals and I like to share what I find with others because the main reason is I want them to be successful and I want them to learn from my mistakes. Whoever said learn from your mistakes is an idiot, right? Don't learn from your own mistakes.
Learn from others.
Learn from Nick and Neil's mistakes, man.
Right. Correct.
You don't need to spend money to make that stupid mistake.
No, that's exactly.
And then the other thing I'll just say, invest in your education. I mean, I spend $100,000 a year probably in high level mastermind groups and things that I know that you're also a part of.
Correct.
And that's super important. And people have access to it. Spend a little money and invest in your time. If you don't have a lot of capital to do it now, take advantage of what's on YouTube and in REI groups and Facebook groups and things like that. But the only caveat I'll say about that, vet out whoever it is that you ever choose to do work with or listen to, and make sure that because you don't know what you don't know, Neil, right?
Correct. Yes.
You don't know how to put out a fire and somebody tells you how to put out a fire and they say, just throw water on it. It's a grease fire.
Correct.
You don't know that putting water on a grease fire is bad.
Yes.
And you took that advice from somebody who didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
Then that doesn't mean that's the right answer.
No, that's exactly right. Get proper counsel.
I think that's the biggest thing I always tell the younger investors is that, vet them out, see who they've done work with, see who they've have referral relationships with or testimonials or whatever the case is, and see if they're actually doing what they're teaching and they're saying they're doing. Because to me, that's the most important thing. Because I love being around people that are smarter than me when I can, because I just learn so much faster and the growth is just so much greater as a result of it.
You can shortcut it.
Anyhow,
You're totally
what
right.
it's worth. Take it from a guy that's been around a long time and and learn from the school of hard knocks, and don't wish that on anybody. That's for sure.
No, not at all. Hey, let me transition to our final segment called for Impact. If you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby said it.
Love that. I say that all the time, and most people. And my other favorite one is, what do I do with my hands? Okay, that's another Ricky Bobby reference.
Yeah.
When he wins his first race and he gets interviewed for the first time, and he's doing this to the microphone, and he goes, "What do I do with my hands?" Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Just love that movie.
Why do you like it? Why do you say it?
It's some of those movies. It's like that's a great movie where I can turn it on 20 minutes in or 20 minutes left. Yeah. And it just makes you laugh, man. It's just everybody's so uptight these days. It's like, you know what, just take a chill pill and just enjoy life for what it is, and take advantage of it when you can.
Yeah. What do you think holds most investors back from taking action to get to the next level in their own world?
I think it's just it's the fear of the unknown. I mean, it's just they don't know they don't know what they know, they don't know what they don't know, and it's the fear of losing. And that's why that's the other value. I always think that it's always wise to do partnerships in some capacity when you're first starting out with somebody that has expertise, experience, and knowledge, even if it costs you 80% of the deal. Here's a perfect example of this. I tell people that if they're going to get into real estate, they need to use hard money lenders. And not that I like hard money lenders, but here's what I can tell you about hard money lenders versus a private lender. Difference, right? Private lender is not the same as a hard money lender.
That's correct.
I like hard money lenders, and they go, well, they're expensive. They're 12-2, or that's what I pay, or 15-3, or whatever. Right. I don't care, because here's what a hard money lender does for you. It keeps you from making a stupid mistake. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because I can promise you, I don't know a hard money lender that will underwrite a deal and give you money unless they're extremely confident that the deal is going to get them paid. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah. Why? So if it's good enough for a hard money lender, then it's probably good enough for you, because they're not going to let you make a mistake. They're going to try not to, unless they just don't do a good job. Whereas a private lender, they might be cheaper, but they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know what to look for. They don't know how to evaluate the deal and look at certain things that are extremely important.
Well,
so
you know what? Sometimes there's an old saying that says, there's smart money and there's dumb money. Smart money may cost you more up front, but dumb money will cost you more in the end.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Outside of real estate, what are you most passionate about?
I would say probably helping others, whether it's, from a charitable standpoint or other investors or younger people. I've been pretty fortunate, and I'm not able to give as much as I would like to give, because I still, I got an expensive family, man. I got 2 college kids, and that like to still spend money and haven't figured out that it doesn't grow in the ground or off a tree. But
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately that's where I like to be able to get to. And once I get the cash flow that I've been working on up to a point where it allows me to do it, I like to focus more time on that piece of it. I've never been a big educator and a big fan of education, because I always sort of questioned my knowledge of it. I always thought there was somebody smarter than me. And there always is somebody smarter than you, right? And I always thought, well, can I really talk and say what I feel and think, when I know when there's probably a different answer, a better answer, or somebody that's more knowledgeable. But at the end of the day, I know it adds tremendous value to a big part of the population. And that's sort of, I guess.
I think that's your humility speaking there.
Well,
when you question that, maybe that may lead me in my fourth and final question. What's your favorite way to make an impact in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of goes hand in hand with that. Just be able to give back. I mean, like I said, I wish I could give more. I think it was Branson that said, I want to make as much money as I can make, so that when I don't need to make it anymore, I can give it all away, right? Or something that I'm paraphrasing, and I think it was Tim, when they talk about, well, you make so much money and do it, but that's sort of it. I mean, hopefully someday I'll be able to have that position, and I'll live long enough to be able to help. I like helping people that I don't want to give people, a handout. I want to give them a hand up kind of thing. I want to help them. If there's a will, we'll find out a way. But that's really sort of where I'm at. I want to make sure that, I can be of help whenever I can to as many people that I can help.
Well, I certainly know you do that through your education and bringing people along and what you've done here today for those listeners. And for anybody who wants to know more, they can check out the show notes and follow you along here.
Yeah, do it, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I hope hopefully somebody learned a little bit of something on maybe not only what to do, but maybe what not to do, right? It's
just as
there's
important,
two sides,
sometimes more important.
Two sides to every coin, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. Hey, for everybody here at Real Grit, I'm Neil Timmons, reminding you that real estate requires real grit. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Neil.
If you like our content and want more, you can access it at realgritpodcast.com. You hear it guest after guest. Instinctively, you already know it. But let me call it out. The most expensive action is inaction. The real estate market is full of opportunities. You just need to uncover them. You can build a business that lasts for years, makes monumental impact in the lives of those that you love. It's not just about business, but about the freedom you get because of it. Have you ever heard the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I believe that partnering is essential. In fact, I partner with hardworking investors all the time. The point is that you can get a lot further with the right partner. Let me say it again, the right partner. If you've ever thought about partnering with anyone, or if you have a partner now, I encourage you to download my free Partner and Profit Guide, which includes the top 5 must-answer questions to evaluate a profitable partnership. You can find it at www.legacyimpactpartners.com. I'll see you in the next episode.